Hi there guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today you're joining me at a Range Rover Sport HSE Dynamic. I've literally just picked it up. It's coming into my stock range and I'm still very much a big fan of the Range Rovers, but it does beg the question as to whether it's still a good idea to purchase them or not. But let me show you around the car first of all and we'll get into it. Now I'll admit that red on red is quite a lot. I'm a big fan of it personally. I think it's certainly something different than your everyday Range Rover, if there is such a thing, where the amount of Range Rovers I've sold with a dark exterior colour with the black interior is probably 80% of Range Rovers that I've sold, and then the other, let's say 15%, have been dark exteriors with light interiors, so the ivory leathers, which I'm a real big fan of. I really like that colour combination. And then the red is the remaining 5, if you like. Again, big fan of it. I've had a couple of the dark exteriors with the red interior. This is the first one that I've had which has been both red on red, but then it is a HSE Dynamic, which means that it does have almost like a black pack to it. So the black alloy wheels, the black mirror caps, and also the black lettering. The actual Range Rover lettering is in black as well. And then obviously the HSE side of that means that you get a really good specification as well. So you do get the electric heated memory seats, heated seats in the front, heated seats in the rear also. You get the reversing camera with the front and rear parking sensors. You get Bluetooth telephone connection, and you can also stream your audio. You get sat nav, you get cruise control, multifunctional steering wheel, and just, you know, the list goes on with the HSE. It is lovely. Has this one got the fridge? It's not got the fridge, but they sometimes have the fridge within the centre compartment. But just what a car. I absolutely love them. This particular one has only done 58,454 miles. Also has a full Land Rover service history all the way through, which I think is just great on a car like this. So it's lovely low mileage with a great service history, previously done with Roger Young. They're a local dealership to me. Well, I say local, they're 50 miles away, but they're one of the local dealerships to me, and they're very, very good. So very pleased that they're the ones to have looked after it last. And as I say, just what a place to be. I actually went across to Europe, just trying to think what year it was now. Might have been last year. Yeah, I think it was. And we went across on the Eurotunnel. We only had the one dog there. We only had Loki. We took him with us, so it was just fantastic. It was very convenient, and I absolutely adore driving in Europe. I think the standards of driving are far better, and you actually, you know, you can actually enjoy the road trip. So I think I did about 2,400 miles in one of these, and mine was way higher mileage than this. Mine was 167, 168,000 by the time I come back. So a lot of miles in a week. But loved every single mile of it because it was just so comfortable and so capable. It's the 3-litre SD V6, which I know a lot of people have had reliability issues. It is a weak point of the Range Rover. I always suggest just over servicing them. You know, I think the Range Rover interval is just too long. So I say to people, look, why don't you do it like every 8,000 miles? And just, some people even do it every 6,000 miles, depending on how soon that would be, I suppose. But this one's been serviced every year, and obviously having only done 58,000 miles, it's really not too much of a concern for this particular one in my mind. But yeah, I mean, mine was a massively high mileage one, but it was a HSE Dynamic, and it was the 63 plate, so a year older than this. So there are some subtle differences between the two. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was ever such a practical car, could fit everything into it, including the dog in the back, and yeah, just thought it was absolutely excellent. So really enjoyed that road trip, and any opportunity I get to buy these cars as of late, I've been snapping them up, because I just think they're absolutely great cars, and there are people that still see a tremendous value to be had. And I think now more than ever, that's really quite prevalent, in the sense that this particular car, this exact example, let's go with this one. There's an invoice amongst the paperwork, which I've just picked up from a trader where I bought this car. And there was an invoice in there where the car was purchased less than 2 years ago, and not much less mileage than what it is now, for £31,000, which at the time was the going rate of a Range Rover. You know, it's what people were willing to pay, and that's how it went. And then obviously there's been quite the dramatic decrease in the value of a Range Rover, but nothing to do with the actual product itself, more to do with how easily it's been stolen, which has been a real shame, don't get me wrong, and feel bad for anyone who's had their car stolen, of course. And it's certainly not good enough from JLR, the fact that it took them so long to come up with a recall whilst all of this was happening. None of that is really that acceptable. But I don't think it was these Range Rovers that were being pinched. Certainly not within the southwest. I mean, I didn't hear of any Range Rovers being stolen down here. Not to say it didn't happen, I just didn't necessarily hear of it. It was always going to be in the bigger cities and everything like that they were being pinched. But these here, I think they were a little bit old for the thieves to kind of be targeted, because I think if you went for a facelift between 2018 to 2022, I imagine they went for those because they were a higher value car, of course. As much as it was very much the same kind of design and everything like that, they were just naturally a higher value car. So I don't think these were necessarily targeted, but I do think that the insurance companies kind of took advantage of that, kind of put a blanket over the whole of Range Rover as a brand, and says, no, it's either got to go up massively or we can't do it because they're being stolen. And you think, well, okay, I don't think it's these ones, but you can't necessarily argue with them because, you know, legally you have to have insurance. But I don't think it was these ones that necessarily been targeted, and I still think that these Range Rovers are still very relevant to today, really. You know, the tech in it's still quite cool. The look is still a very, you know, very good looking car, and the comfort of it is absolutely great. It's got enough tech in it to kind of appease me, and I've sat in much nicer, newer cars and all of that. But these, I just think at the moment, they're just phenomenal value. So it's not a case of me jumping into a video saying, you know, oh, the market's crashing or anything like that. It's already crashed. That's kind of been and gone. So in my mind, the Range Rovers have leveled themselves out at such a value that if you were ever considering buying a Range Rover previously but thought, oh no, now's not the time, I think now kind of is the time, because I don't think they're going to bottom out much more than what they have, and it's becoming harder and harder to find a low mileage example, because of course these models have now been superseded. So if it was to be bought as a low mileage example and they put a low mileage on it, then it's no longer a low mileage example. So I think there is a sweet spot of the Range Rover buying experience at this present moment. But yeah, I mean, as a HSE dynamic goes, just a very, very pleasant drive. As I say, I've been across in Europe in one, and you can also, with this little dial here, turn it across to the left, that actually puts it into the dynamic mode of HSE dynamic. So the dials go red, so you get even more red in this particular case. So the dials go red, stiffens itself up, the throttle becomes a little bit more responsive, and it still holds itself to a sporty SUV, which realistically is what it's supposed to be. I've driven many of the Vogues. I've actually got a Vogue Autobiography in at the moment. Stunning cars, although they are a bit bigger and a little bit more wallowy on the corners, especially on the roads that I drive day in, day out, which is why I chose at the time the Range Rover Sport, because I thought, well, that was a cracking mix, because you've still got a lovely big car, you know, you're still sat upright, you've still got great visibility, you can look over the country hedges and all of that, and I really enjoyed that aspect, with the ability to be able to park it, and also if I really wanted to, and there's a bit of a back roads and whatnot, I could put it into a dynamic mode and have a bit of fun with it. So yeah, definitely enjoy the sport size, and I still think it's a Range Rover in its own right. You know, it's not trying to be anything else other than a Range Rover Sport. So yeah, I mean, it's worn very well, even though it's done next to no mileage. It's obviously a 64 plate, but none of the buttons are flaked or broken or fading or anything like that. There's a little bit of a, I don't even know what you call it. It's almost like a rubber texture on the actual buttons. That becomes a little bit, you know, edgy in places. But there are some stuff out there, even the magic sponges and stuff, that will clean that right up. So yeah, I'm going to get this one into the showroom, give it a right good clean through all the way through. And I think whoever decides that they're going to buy this low mileage example, or any low mileage example of this kind of car, you're in for a great experience. I think they're absolutely lovely. I think you've got to over service them in some regards, which I know you shouldn't necessarily have to, but you know, needs must, and we just kind of make it work, don't we? But yeah, it's new stock, and as I say, I quite enjoy doing these videos because I'll be driving back anyway. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts or your comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help. The numbers are growing, which I really do appreciate, and I look forward to seeing you for the next one. Thanks very much.